1992 saw the re-emergence of the late 80s music press darlings All About Eve. Although their debut album went double gold in 1988, the two albums that followed were considered flops in comparison. Since then, they've changed guitarists and have a brand new record deal. Some of the band's earliest gigs were played in and around Leeds, and recently they performed their latest material at a well-received gig at Leeds Polytechnic.
It is good to get back on the road because we did an awful lot of sitting around last year because several things happened in swapping record companies. Takes a kind of chunk of time, you know, just hanging out in a solicitor's office a few times. We had new management, all that kind of stuff. There were lots of new changes. When we got the new deal, it meant immediately a new record, so that necessitated us going off, writing an album, you know, which it happened quickly, you know, and then we wanted to get into the studio really quickly, so it was a very off-the-road year for us because we had this thing to do that was kind of more important, and also because it was such a watershed period, there was no point in going out and playing all the old songs. You know, it would have been like felt like a reunion tour or something if we'd have done that. So that's why we've been quiet, and that's why it's really good to get out again. There's definitely been some kind of shift going on in the audience from what we've seen so far, because really we're throwing a lot at them at one time. I suppose if some person in the audience hasn't seen All About Eve for 2 years, then they're going to be really confused and perhaps disappointed. Some will be relieved. We've had such mixed reactions, you know, it's like everything from the guitars are louder, the light show is kind of more psychedelic, for want of a better word. You know, even chopping my hair off has depressed some people. And some people have said, oh, your hair's really nice. You know, it's on every level. So to some people it does look like a new band. The beginning, I was messing around on a 4-track machine in my bedroom with the unlikely combination of a Scottish bass player and a female German drummer and no guitarist. We didn't get very far like that. I met Tim, our old guitarist, and it started getting a bit serious because he really could play and nobody else in the band was awfully musical. German girl and Scottish bass player departed. Tim had this mate that happened to be Andy who could play bass. By this time we'd made an independent record. So Tim brought this record round to Andy's for his approval. And then there were 3. And that's really when All About Eve proper started. You know, it had all been not very much more than a joke before then. And that's when we started writing songs and realised that the 3 of us were really the start of something. We sauntered along with the drum machine for ages, chapter 2.
Oh God. And then eventually we got tired of the drum machine after the first album. Well, we got a session player on the album, the first album, and Mark came along. So he was a great bloke, we got on with him, so he joined. And we did the second album, then we did the third album, and here we are now.
Things that I found out what no one's about to tell me. Things that I found out I don't wear scarlet well. Waiting before me, poets and painters may say, when will you stumble our way? Kick off your red shoes and fly down. I'll die for their words if I want to, and I do. Things that I found out, no one's about to tell me. Things that I found out. I was the London link. I was from Coventry and I was in London, been there for ages. And somebody told me about this guy who lived in Yorkshire, Huddersfield, near Leeds. And that was Tim. And he wrote this letter, he swapped tapes and all that. And I remember him saying, oh, he came to an audition, he said, oh, well, that's great, I'll move down to London. And thinking, oh no, I don't want the responsibility of you packing your bags, leaving home and coming down to London. I felt really responsible. And it was quite a mess because he thought that we were just being polite and we didn't want him. You know, when really it was just a big move. So he packed his bags, got on the coach and that was him. And Andy had come down for a different reason.
Yeah, I joined another band down in London. Me and Tim were in a band in Huddersfield for years and years and realised that it wasn't working. So I also moved down to London. And then they poached me off this other band. So they're evil, really.
See, the weird thing is, it all got together in London, but nobody was from London. You know, we got Coventry, Mirfield, Huddersfield, and Mark. He's from Lancashire. But you know, it was like, it was people who said, oh, Northern band. It's like, well, yes, but formed in London. It was kind of geographically against all odds that we would ever get together. We spent 3 years with them. The first one was a blissful honeymoon period where they threw thousands and thousands of pounds at us, and put us in beautiful studios and bothered to advertise our record. Then we had the big hit, you know, we had the top 10 hit, Martha's Harbour. That's when the rot kind of set in, because we suddenly, from being an ex-indie group making interesting music, we became this kind of breadwinner band that could go out and bring home the bacon so that, you know, the other interesting bands could live. You know, we became that kind of band. We made another album for the Scarlet and Other Stories, which was pretty dark, and you know, the difficult second album was certainly very true of that. Unfortunately, we then went on to make a difficult third album. We'd lost in the meantime a guitarist to Arch Goth's Sisters of Mercy. Off he went, and we got my favourite guitarist of the time to work with us, Marty Wilson Piper from the church. Just kind of asked him on the off chance if he'd be interested. Didn't quite think he'd be as free as he was, and instead of just getting someone to play on the album, we got a band member. And went with MCA because they promised to leave us alone, and so far they've left us alone. You know, this current album, Ultraviolet, we were allowed to produce it ourselves, and there was no kind of committee set up to choose which songs we put on it. It was like being an indie group with the option to have loads of money to do it if you wanted to, but we decided not to take that option because we realised whose money we're spending now. Marty was my first choice, but he wasn't quite as known in this country. But I mean, I was such a massive Church fan for so long. There's a brilliant coincidence where they played in London and we met up with them afterwards. Had a quick chat with Marty. You know, it wasn't exactly soulmates or anything. Didn't think I'd ever see him again. You know, just a 5-minute chat. But when the opportunity came up, I just thought, well, you know, maybe I should just give him a ring and see what he's doing. And that's how it happened. It was just quite a fateful, definitely the right person being there at the right time.
The morning I was supposed to come over to London to meet the band, I was in bed with a serious abscess and my mouth was out like this, wasn't it? And my whole side of my face was out here, and at like, my flight was at 11:15, and at 8 o'clock in the morning I didn't know if I could move, you know, and but you know, up I got on my plane.
He came over and we thought, God, he's miserable. All he does is moan and talk about guitars.
Marty came over, he had a swollen mouth. He'd just had a tooth out, an abscess in his tooth. And brought these beers over and he couldn't drink any of the beers. So I thought he was a bit of a wimp, obviously. And then the next day in rehearsal, me and Mark got there before him, and I saw all his amps lined up with the church on the back. And I just thought, is this going to work? What's Julianne done to us, you know? But we plugged in, and it just worked straight away. It just sounded great. Because before that, last year with Tim, when we went to rehearsal, it just sounded terrible. It was awful, you know. Nothing was working. But like I say, you know, we plugged in with Marty, and it just sounded great.
The old fans are mixed. Some of them from the very early days thought that we lost the plot along the way. You know, the people who liked the first album and the early independent singles, when we went a bit folky, you know, they kind of hung their Macs up and thought, well, that's it now. They thought we'd lost the plot. So now that they've heard this, they think that they have said to us that we've rediscovered our roots, you know, we've got back to what we originally set out to do before people started throwing in their two penniths all over the place. So that's great if they can recognise that. Some people are just frightened of change.
The old fans are astonished.
They don't quite know what to do with themselves.
I mean, we just sound different. It's a mixture of, God, it's really different, and I think I like it, and how dare they change so much when I loved them as they were.
They were my perfect thing, you know.
Yeah. It's like it's like your girlfriend. You come home and your girlfriend who's blonde's dyed her hair black. You know, it's kind of like.
And was listening to jazz.
I was listening to jazz, yeah.
It's a big challenge now because the music, you know, the music's changed so much. It's like starting again almost, and it's going to be definitely like that in other countries, you know, because America, we haven't done anything over there, so it's going to be like starting again. But that's great, you know. It's great to go back to playing to 500 people instead of 3,000, you know. It's just more of a challenge.
How
I mean, obviously I wasn't part of the history for the first 2 records, which is the big period, but people are kind of holding the group to that.
Yeah, we've got to sort of live that down in a way, you know. It's like we're always being likened to those days, you know, even now, you know, like for nostalgia value, you know.
What do you want to do?
How about our next hit single?
Yeah. Hey, that's an idea.
Yeah. All those fine Yorkshire people are going to go out and buy it. We were not press darlings anymore, and we got a long way before on being new. You know, we were new. We hadn't blotted our copybooks. Our copybook is full of blots now, but we're still valid, you know, we're still relevant, and we're still here.